Hey, Composing Gloves here, and this is the Sound and Synth Basics on stereo. Now, I'm going to bring it about in a way you may not have thought before for you people who maybe know about stereo, you people who don't, or think that you might have a little bit defined but are fuzzy on the concepts. We are going to make it clear. Now, I want you to think about this before we even get started. Think about this. We have two ears, okay, and we hear in surround sound. What does that mean? Because stereo is when you have two sound sources to reproduce an image. Them combined, so meaning this one plus this one together, if we were to mono them down, it's just a weird thing when you really get to thinking about, like, is it really stereo then? Because you have two ears, but they get combined into your brain. So we say we hear in stereo, but it ends up in mono, but we process the information differently. It's this weird thing. So stereo is more about the art of surround. So if this is more confusing to you, we're going to make it more clear as we go. But if you get what I'm saying, it's really weird. It's the way you collect information that is different. The way you present it changes the way you collect it. And so now let's back up. Now that you sort of have that as a concept, there's all these weird sort of things I think about that I'm like, man, this is like how it works. This is what the generally accepted definition is. But when you think about it, it gets summed in your head. When you sum it to your, like, a stereo image really comes down to a mono signal. It's this weird thing. Okay, so let's back it up. So we hear in surround sound, meaning, like, let's say I take this bottle and I shake it around. You will hear it maybe through the microphone or whatever, but I hear it in my environment. Things bounce off walls, they hit things, and all these different things happen. Then I want to record it. Let's say I want to record this thing bouncing off the walls and stuff. So I've collected if I were just listening with my two ears, I would collect it differently, but now it's going to go into my mic. So it goes into my mic and I have off-axis noise, all these different things happening. And let's say that I only have one mic. I've recorded it as a mono signal. There is one thing recording it, and one source can reproduce this signal. Let's say I have one speaker too. So I take my recording and I play it out this speaker, and it would sound the exact same as if I had captured it, given that my conversion of, the electronics of my microphone and my digital to analog converter, or maybe it's an analog recording or whatever, given all the discrepancies that are introduced by the process itself, if everything was perfect, including the speaker, the exact same signal that went into my microphone would come out sounding the exact same way my microphone captured it. Okay, so we have that. Now, that's a mono signal. Now, if you had two microphones, so we've got two microphones, this is real. Right now, we're talking about real stereo. So now you're recording in stereo. You've got two separate microphones to record a source. Now, there's a whole bunch of different stereo miking techniques. This is an example of a stereo microphone. There are two ways to record this. Well, there's a whole bunch of different stereo microphone techniques, but there are two microphones to record my sound field. One is responsible. This happens to be a near coincident pair. But one is responsible for my left side and one is responsible for my right side. So let's say that I'm just like a dude sitting in a cave singing about how my dog died, waiting for the next earthquake to kill me. But instead of singing country, I'm singing reggae. And while I'm singing in there, I want to record myself in stereo because I want people to really have an experience. So I want to record the space as if it was actually like, I want to assign a microphone to each side of my space so that when I play it back, the left side sounds like the left side of the cave and the right side sounds like the right side of the cave. There's a whole bunch of other philosophies about stereo too, but we're not really going to get into them. But you need to know that real stereo is when you record an actual space to represent different parts of your sound field coming from your stereo image come from the way you recorded it. Now, there's so much more. Like, the more I think about this, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an enormous topic, but it's really important for you to know. I'm going to get shiny because my son is moving onto the camera. It's kind of weird. Okay, so there's that concept. So we have this idea of recording things in a space and assigning different parts of our space to the environment. And we have this idea about collecting the information differently, which is, as you see in mono, we've collected it from one spot. So it might not collect the reverberation off of that corner as good. The microphone's not as prominent in that area. I'm using a cardioid microphone, which is specifically has a particular shape about it. But we're not talking about microphones. This is like a whole nother subject. But anyways, you have all these things, right, going on. And so we get two microphones. We'll therefore be able to represent the space as it would actually occur. So we can acquire the same information about the space in a more accurate way than we could with just one microphone. That's what I was saying earlier is the way you collect it is we just simply collect it differently. Even we have two ears, but then it gets to our brain. It's technically a mono, but it's like I'm not sure if I haven't studied neuroscience, but it's like this weird thing. Now let's talk about really quick how we hear. Just a tad. You might consider looking up a video on how we hear about this, but it's really important for stereo and fake stereo. So we have two ears, and there are actually many different ways in which we break apart sound. Like each curve and divot in your ear serves to break up the frequency spectrum differently and process it differently, and it adds subtle delays so you can hear different parts differently. It's just really, really, really cool. I was reading all sorts of books on it for a while. I was learning all these weird names and things. So we're not going to be talking about any of that though. It's really cool. You should look it up. We're going to be talking about the two principal ways. Like if you go to school for this, they're going to talk about these probably the most. Now they call them oral different. So when you hear orally. It's spelled with an A-U something or other. Oral. That's how you spell that. A-U something or other. And what it is you hear in your left. I keep doing this because I just feel like I need two things to represent stereo. Really get stereo is when you have two sources. So to represent an image. Now with our two ears, we have two different ways to hear. We have interaural intensity differences. Finally said it. Interaural intensity differences and interaural time differences. So let's talk about the first one. Interaural intensity differences. That is when you have a source, like a sound source. Like let's say there's a person over there singing to me about how they really love orange, and I'm sitting here screaming like, dude, man, bro, this is great. But in order for me to hear it, let's say he's sitting slightly off to the left, my left. So he's sitting over there and he's singing, and the sound hits me at the same, let's say it hits both ears at the same time. Almost every sound is going to be a combination, but let's just say theoretically for some weird reason, it hits both my ears at the exact same time. But there's a difference in the way it hits my ears. It hits my left ear louder than my right ear. My right ear is slightly softer than my left ear. So I'm like, oh, he's on the left. That's an interaural intensity difference. One ear receives a more intense signal than the other. Therefore, I can position where they are in my field. So the other one is timing difference. So if he's sitting over there, it's going to hit my left ear before it hits my right ear. And therefore, I'll be like, oh, he's definitely over there because it hit my left ear first. Like this difference is super subtle, but your brain is incredible and can do this. I think vertically, our accuracy is up to like a degree, might be 2 degrees. I can't remember. And then not vertically, horizontally, like a degree or 2. And then up and down, I think it's about 3 degrees of accuracy. So we're a little less accurate up and down. We're more accurate horizontally. Like if you were to close your eyes and someone were to be speaking, you could point your finger over there. Now there's all sorts of different techniques and sort of tricks people could play on you to fool your ear into thinking the sound is somewhere that it's not. And they use all sorts of things now in new stereo technologies and stuff like that. But anyways, when you are recording a real stereo image, you take advantage of these interaural and interaural intensity differences and interaural time differences genuinely. You do not fake anything about it. You are trying to capture those as they happen in real life with microphones. And because you are doing that, you are going to get a true stereo image. Now, there's another option that is fake stereo. So fake stereo is when you take something that isn't stereo and then you put it in a stereo field. So let's talk about the idea of a stereo field. So we have two sound sources that are going to generate an entire image of sound for us. So we have a left image and a right image. When they're playing the exact same thing at the same time, they're in phase, everything's the same about these signals, and they come out both speakers, that is referred to as mono. It is mono. Or you just have one speaker. That's real mono. But if you have two systems, a system playing the same thing at the same volume, at the same time, similar signal, all that jazz, it is considered mono. And that will perceive. So right now I've got a speaker here, a speaker here. If I had a speaker in my middle, but I don't, but it'll sound like it's coming out the middle because they're playing the same thing. That's called the phantom center. Then we could take advantage of this, and even though it's not in stereo, we could make the signal slightly louder in the left one than it is in the right one. And as a result, we get a stereo image, one that wasn't there. This didn't happen in real life. It's not a true stereo image. It is a fake stereo image. And as a result, we perceive a space. It instantly sounds like it belongs somewhere. We could take advantage of this in mixing in sound design, and we could put things in there and make a lot of room. Now, instead of just putting things horizontally, we could put them, in the back. We could put them in the front. We can move them to the side. We could do all these really, really cool things. There's all sorts of interesting ideas I have about speakers too, because of right now, all speakers pretty much use electromagnetic induction. And there's some really interesting ideas. If we could make a speaker that like functions on like some sort of a cylinder or something, think about like that would just be weird, because then you could angle the speaker around and change where the piston is and change you don't even need to use a cone anymore. If you could come up with some sort of fabric that can move with angled sounds. Anyways, this is all, I was thinking about that for a long time. I was like, oh man, I'm going to make this. But then the whole making something that can silently go back and forth on demand became a lot more complicated. If you're a mechanical engineer, hit me up. I'm interested to know. So, okay. Now that we've got that settled, so we have a stereo image, we know about these different cues. What is fake stereo? Let's talk about panning. So I'm going to be using, for this video, something called BX Solo Brainworks, and I have a video on mid-side, which is a stereo technique, but you do not need to know about it. All you need to know is that it has the capability to make whatever information is different between the two speakers appear as mono, sort of. And I'm going to be using Citrus as my source signal generator. If you do not know what Citrus is, you don't need to. First of all, I'm not going to be using any sort of advanced features about Citrus. I'm just going to be using it as a basic level to demonstrate stereo, but I do have two courses on it. Okay, so let's talk about this. So right now I've got a signal, right? It's mono. And something about FL is it shows you everything in stereo. A lot of DAWs will have mono channels, and that is perfectly fine. The way FL does it is, well, you've got two speakers generating the same signal. So we're going to show you two separate channels. So in this way, FL actually is kind of telling the truth. I've heard it get hate for this, and I used to think that, but one day I turned my brain on and I thought about it, and I was like, wait a second. All the DAWs with mono things showing you just one lane are lying to you, because it's generating multiple signals. So you're hearing a stereo image that is mono because it's coming out both at the same volume. So in this way, it's sort of true, but it's also very misleading because it doesn't represent things like phase, or it just shows pure volume. Well, in this case, it shows binary, typical, like on a VU meter, it'd be voltage or whatever. But hopefully you understood that part. So look at this. So there's two signals, right? We have a left and right, and they're coming out at the exact same volume. Look at that. It's just the exact same. These are also peak meters, if you care to know. It doesn't really matter right now. So we can pan it. So this is fake stereo. It's called pan pot stereo. I believe pan stands for panorama. I believe. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. I forgot. I used to know. So what it does is, when you pan something, you simply take the signal that was the same volume in both, and oh, whoops, that's effects. My bad. That's coursing. But you see, we got a stereo image right there, but that's a whole nother story, because they're not similar signals anymore. So anyways, okay, we have panning. And doesn't take a genius to realize, all panning does is panning takes a signal that was like, right now, for it to be mono, it's the same. If we want to put it in space, we simply turn it down in one speaker relative to the other. And now we get an interaural intensity difference. And so as a result, unless your speakers are placed poorly, then you get an interaural time difference, which is bad. Because it messes with your stereo image, because now you've put a cue in your mix that isn't really there, which is one reason why speaker placement is so important. But so we've got our left signal, and now it sounds like it's over here because we have turned down the volume relative in this one. Now you see, FL actually turned it up too, which is it's just a scheme. There's actually lots of different ideas about how pan pot stereo should work. That's okay. So then you do the other way, it's the same deal. So now you know about panning. It's fake. It was not actually ever stereo. We have just tricked our ears by throwing in a couple of little curveballs to fool it. And that's the whole idea behind stereo. Whenever you open up a stereo plugin, they're probably going to have some sort of variation on delay to delay one speaker before the other. So you're going to be like, oh, hey, look at that. It's coming out of this one first, so it must be over here. And it will change the way it feels in a space. You probably see me during some of my mix downs just go and open it up and slap it on just a basic delay thing, or maybe an intensity difference thing, simply to just change that. So that's how panning works. So there's a bunch of different schemes for panning. You saw, let's really quick explore the idea of the chorus right here. So I don't think I've covered chorus. Go look up my fruity chorus video if you don't know what chorusing is. But essentially, it changed because what it did was it duplicated my signal, so it was different. And then it was introducing a delay, which caused phase differences in my stereo image, causing me to perceive a stereo image. Now, it's really easy to just hear. It's like, oh, look at that. It's left, right, left, right. And you can see the whooshing right here. This, it's not plain. If it's mono, that's the spread between the two is the difference between the two speakers. So you can hear that. So this is, again, just go look up chorusing. So, okay, now let's get to the part where I'm actually going to use citrus. So I'm going to put a signal out in stereo. So I'm going to put two signals out. They're the exact same signal. Sounds like that. Look, it even looks the same volume, same everything. Shouldn't be a shocker. If I turn one down, I can introduce my own sort of panning unnecessarily. So now I'm going to make two different. I'm going to make two a triangle wave. This may get a little annoying, but it's necessary to learn. So here we go. We've got a triangle wave on my, what is this? My right, and then a sine wave on my left. And it's very annoying. So now if I solo my left, I get my sine wave. I solo my right, I get my triangle wave. If I solo the mid, look at that. I get a mix. It's the same thing. Now if I solo the sides, okay, so you'll notice that when we put it on side, you'll notice that it's very, very soft. This is because of the nature of the way mid-side works. Go look up mid-side if you want to know more about it. So essentially what mid is when you have, so it treats your left and right channels as separate things. It's actually this whole configuration of left and right. Well, here, mid together is fine because it is taking the mid plus the side, the left plus the right. Usually you actually do this. It's a little weird doing it in one channel. And then we have side, which is the left minus the right. And so as a result, it is subtracting the two, and we hear a side signal when the signal is exactly the same. Hopefully you caught that on. So let's do that one more time. So we have mid, so our left channel and our right channel are, whenever they line up, so let's say they're the exact same signal. They line up, so they're just going to sum together. So that's mono compatible. Like that's the signal that is shared that is coming out. Now the side channel is the left channel minus the right channel. So what's here right here? Now, if we notice here, out our left and right, we have the exact same thing. So if we subtract the one thing from itself, we're going to get 0, nothing. Which, look at that. I'm playing notes and nothing is coming out. Now, if I simply change it so that there is a difference, we will hear what is the difference between the two. That's the idea behind this stereo technique, is you use two microphones and you do all this mumbo jumbo and you can get some pretty cool stuff. But we're not talking about that kind of technique right now. We're talking about this. So if I make a difference, like let's say, for example, I increase this one to a different pitch, I hear some more harmonics. If I change the waveform, I hear a different waveform. So that's the idea here. So that is mid-side, or not mid-side, but that hopefully you're getting the idea of a stereo image. Like, oh, hey, look at that. I've got this thing going on here. When I put things in a stereo image, it is doing all sorts of things. If we were to solo the left, solo the right, but as we mess with them in our stereo image, we get that. So that's our actual stereo image. We've been listening to it in mono because what this also does is it sums things to a mono signal, so that you can hear what's there. And then when you open it back up, you get your stereo image. So very cool. Now, one thing, I mean, like that's really it. But as you can see, we can make things set differently. Because now, okay, let's get a little more complicated. Why not? Let's just get a little more complicated. As you can hear, when I move things, I'm changing where the intensity differences lie and thus shifting the phase cancellation. Now, if you were to do this and modulate crap at the same time, it gets even more complicated. Like, because you're moving phases and then you're changing relative amplitudes, which would also change phase relationships, and you just get a whole mess of stuff. So when you're doing stuff, really good mixers they're aware of these things. They don't let it bother them, but they are aware of also the idea that if your two channels are this phase cancellation thing, if it gets out of hand, if you make things really, really wide, meaning there's a large difference, because if it's the same, if it's mono compatible, it'll sound the same. But if it's a very wide stereo image, you are going to run into all sorts of weird things. Like, for example, you'll get phase cancellation that'll cause things to just disappear. And so there are tricks some people use to make it sound really big and wide, but then when you bring it back down to be mono, it just disappears because this happened to be just an inverted version of this, or the delay when summed together. If you're listening on like a phone that's going to sum your stuff together before it plays it out, because it's a mono source, there's only one speaker, you're like, let's say your killer vocal that was made with this massive delay between the two things sums together, it's gonna just disappear. Goodbye, see you later. So you want to be aware of problems like that with your stereo image. That is pretty much a stereo image in a nutshell. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I really want to say on this subject. Yeah, so if you're open, let's open up one thing real quick. So you have stereo shaper. Look at that. You have a couple ways to mess with delay and phase, because a difference in phase will cause a difference in signal as well. Because if let's say you have the exact same signal, it's theoretically supposed to be mono, but your equipment sucks, so you have a different phase start out on this side than this side, that'll cause an intensity difference, and it will get summed when you hear it, and that will be a problem, because now you've got a stereo image where there shouldn't be a stereo image, and it will sound like phasing and stuff like that. So that's phase. So it's when you have a difference in phase between your left and right channel. Then you have your delay, which is you simply delay it. And then you have your intensity differences. It's really not that complicated. So that's stereo. That's true stereo. Hopefully you're more aware of this and are now aware because of some of these things. Again, I recommend you look up How You Hear, because it's a very interesting topic. They're very, very, very powerful tools for you as an engineer. If you have any questions, let me know. I could smell it right now. Someone's going to ask me some crazy complicated question that is like 5 paragraphs long. To you, I say, go do some research. I'm not like your answer guide guy for that. I mean, like, if I can answer it, I'll probably try my best, but if it's friggin' long, I might not even bother reading it. I don't know. Maybe I'm saying this unnecessarily. You guys should all comment something about the Goonies. If you've never seen the Goonies, you need to go look up the Goonies, and then you need to make a comment and make it related to the Goonies in this video. If you do, you're a winner in life. Subscribe and have a blessed day. And this is the first video in Sound and Synth Basics. I'm super excited about this series. I hope you're excited. If you don't know anything about sound, if this is your first shot, then this is the series for you. I'm going to teach it. I've thought about this. I want a real solid series, because as I get into more advanced things, I need people to understand the basics like how I know that I understand them. And so I've thought a lot about the concepts and orders that this has to be.